It was supposed to be a dinner, just dinner. Nothing fancy, nothing emotional, just a quiet evening at my father's estate for my 34th birthday. After years of being ignored, I thought maybe they were finally trying. The dining room was as grand and cold as ever, chandeliers casting shadows on expensive china, a long, polished table set for more people than I cared to count. My father sat at the head, as usual, his posture stiff, like he was presiding over a courtroom, not a family meal. My stepmother Patricia clung to his arm with that permanent smile of hers, too white, too perfect. My siblings were there, Aaron, polished and smug as always, and Michael, who hadn't made eye contact with me since I walked in. It didn't feel like a birthday, it felt like a performance, one I didn't audition for. I sat near the middle of the table, invisible. I used to dream of birthdays with laughter, cake, maybe even a toast. But for years, my birthdays passed unnoticed. This dinner, this awkward, silent, tension-soaked dinner, was the first acknowledgement I'd had in over a decade. Part of me hoped it meant something, that maybe my father was ready to see me again, really see me. That hope didn't last long. We were halfway through the main course when my father put down his fork, leaned back, and looked right at me. "Well," he said, swirling the wine in his glass, "it's good to see you contributing. In your own way. Living off trust funds must be exhausting work." The table went quiet. Patricia let out a soft chuckle. Aaron smiled without smiling and said, "Some people are just finding themselves later in life, Dad." I forced a laugh, the kind that doesn't reach your eyes. My stomach twisted. The humiliation sat in my throat like a stone. They always did this. Veiled jabs dressed as jokes. A lifetime of being the outsider in a family that wore masks better than anyone I'd ever met. I looked around the table, and no one said a word. They just went back to cutting steak, sipping wine, pretending nothing had happened. After dinner, I needed air. I slipped out to the garden behind the estate, a carefully manicured space that always felt too perfect, too staged. The string lights above flickered as dusk gave way to night. I turned when I heard footsteps. It was him. He stood there, arms crossed. I steadied my breath. "I just want to understand," I said, calm but firm. "Why do you always treat me like I'm not part of this family?" His jaw tightened. "Don't start this again." "I'm not starting anything. I'm asking." "You're ungrateful. Everything you have is because of me." "I didn't ask for your money," I said. "I asked for honesty, respect." He stepped closer. "You don't deserve it." And then, his hand flew. The sound echoed, not just in the garden, but inside me. His palm had connected with my face in front of Patricia, Aaron, and a few cousins who had followed us out. No one moved. No one spoke. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just stood there, skin burning, ears ringing, eyes locked on his. Something cracked inside me. Not a breakdown. Something sharper. I turned and walked back toward the house, past the stunned faces. Back inside, I heard him call out. "One more thing," he said, raising his voice to the room. "Since we're all here, might as well make it official." He pulled out a piece of paper from his suit jacket. "As of last week, I've revised my will. Everything, every last cent of my $230 million estate goes to Aaron and Michael." He looked directly at me. "Madeline gets nothing. She was never really my daughter." The room froze again. Some averted their eyes. Others suddenly found the walls interesting. No one stood up. No one said, "That's not right." I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't make a scene. I left in silence because that's what I'd always done. But this time, it wasn't out of weakness. It was choice. A clear, cold choice. Back in my car, I gripped the steering wheel until my knuckles went white. My phone buzzed with a text from someone I didn't want to hear from. I ignored it. I stared at the house through the windshield. They could keep the money. That wasn't what hurt. What hurt was the lie I had told myself for years, that one day, if I just tried harder, they'd let me in. I thought of my mother, her voice, her final words to me before she died. "One day, you'll see the pieces fall into place." Maybe this was the day. Later that night, in the quiet of my apartment, I opened the drawer I had avoided for years. It stuck at first, like even the wood was warning me not to look, but I pulled it open. Inside was the file, yellowed papers, sealed envelopes, one labeled adoption records. I sat on the edge of the bed, fingers hovering, chest tight. Then, my phone buzzed again. A number I didn't recognize. The message was short. Miss Alder, we need to talk about your birth records. It's urgent. I didn't sleep. I don't think I even blinked. I lay there in the dark, replaying everything. His hand against my face, his voice announcing to a room full of blood relatives that I was never really his daughter. No tears came, just silence. A thick, heavy kind that settled over me like dust. Morning crept in through the blinds, but it didn't feel like morning. It felt like an extension of the same night. I moved through the apartment on autopilot, made coffee I didn't drink, stood over the sink like I was waiting for something to break. My phone was buzzing with missed calls. Aaron, Michael, even Patricia. Not one apology, just messages like, "You misunderstood," or "Dad didn't mean it that way." They weren't calling to make things right. They were calling to manage the narrative. Then I saw it, the same unknown number from last night. It vibrated again. This time I answered. Miss Alder? The voice was male, controlled, professional. Yes. My name is Jude Harlan. I'm an attorney. I believe we need to speak regarding your birth records. My what? There was a pause, brief but weighted. This is not about your father's estate. I represent a private matter concerning your identity. I can't disclose details over the phone, but I will tell you this. I waited, breath held without meaning to. You were never legally adopted by Victor Alder. I didn't respond. Please, he continued, meet me, today. There are sealed documents you have a right to see. I ended the call without agreeing. I stood in my kitchen, coffee untouched, and felt something unfamiliar. Fear? No. Something colder. I drove without deciding to. I found myself parked outside a small, older law office on the edge of town. No marble lobby, no glass facade, just a brick building with faded lettering, Harlan Associates. Inside, he was waiting. He was younger than I expected, mid-30s maybe, calm eyes. No theatrics in his voice, just a seriousness I couldn't dismiss. Thank you for coming, he said. I didn't agree to anything, I replied. He nodded. You're right. But you came anyway. He slid a manila envelope across the table. One word stamped in red. Confidential. Birch County, Vermont. Inside, documents, brittle with age, hospital intake forms. 2 black and white photos of an infant. One name printed at the top. Elora Jean Holloway. Missing, July 18th, 1991. My breath stopped when I saw her. She had my hair, those same curls. This is a mistake, I said, but I sounded small. There's more, Jude said quietly. These records surfaced during litigation involving Victor Alder. DNA red flags. Payment transfers to Birch County General Hospital. I gripped the edge of the table. Are you telling me he kidnapped me? I'm telling you someone took you, and someone paid to bury it. I don't remember leaving his office. I remember the car. I remember sitting there, engine off, keys still in my hand, unable to move. If this was true, then my entire life was a fabrication. Carefully built, groomed, positioned. By who? I drove home slowly, carefully, like sudden movement would shatter me. I locked the door, closed the curtains, pulled out the box I hadn't opened in years, my so-called baby keepsakes. Everything inside was too neat, too new, too arranged. I found the picture, my mother holding me. But the date scribbled on the back didn't match. 1992. A year off. She looked older, exhausted. It didn't match the other photos. My hands trembled, not with fear, but recognition. There had always been something off. Missing timelines. Vague answers. My childhood doctor once asked if I had any memories before age 3. I thought it was routine. Now it felt like a warning. I opened my laptop, typed, Birch County Missing Children, 1991, and there she was, Elora Jean Holloway. Disappeared from hospital nursery, never recovered. I stared at the screen, numb. Who the hell am I? Then, something I didn't expect. A blinking notification at the bottom of the page. A chat box. Someone was watching the page in real time. ELJ Truth Seeker. If you're reading this, you're not alone. I've been waiting for you. I don't remember driving home, only the feeling that the world outside my windshield didn't belong to me anymore. By the time I reached my apartment, dusk was settling. Cars passed below my window. People walked their dogs. Someone laughed across the street. It all felt distant, like I was looking out at a life I'd never lived. Inside, I kept the lights low. I didn't want to see my reflection. I wasn't sure I'd recognize it. I stood in the middle of the living room and looked around, at the framed photos, the childhood blanket folded too neatly in the corner, the ceramic handprint they said I made in kindergarten. For the first time, none of it felt like mine. These weren't memories. They were exhibits. I walked to the shelf and picked up a photo of me around age 4. Smiling. But where were the earlier ones? Babies have albums. First baths, first birthdays, first steps. I had none of that. I'd never questioned it. I believed what I was told. We lost those early pictures. Now I wondered, were there any to lose? I went to my file cabinet and retrieved my birth certificate. I'd never studied it closely before. This time, I read every line, issued 2 years after my supposed birth. Location, Oklahoma General Women's Hospital. But I'd just remembered Jude saying, Vermont. My stomach tightened. I typed the hospital name online. It never existed. No record, no archive, nothing. Someone didn't misfile my birth. Someone constructed it. I sat back, steadying my breathing. If this was deliberate, then someone wanted me to never ask who I was, and for decades, I never did. I turned on my laptop. I logged back into the Missing Children forum. The message board blinked with a notification. ELJ Truth Seeker. Still looking? My fingers hovered. Me. Who are you? ELJ Truth Seeker. Ask them why you have no photos under age 2. I stared at the words. My throat felt dry. Me. Were you part of it? ELJ Truth Seeker. I was there the night she vanished. I froze. Me. What happened to Elora Jean? There was no response. I waited. Minutes. Nothing. I leaned back, my heart knocking against my ribs. Fear didn't come. Something else did, an awareness. Someone out there had been waiting for me to ask this question. Someone knew I would. I shut the laptop. I lay down on the couch, exhausted. But the moment I closed my eyes, something surfaced. A flash, not a dream. Something older. A white hallway. Cold floors. A woman crying. A man's voice. Firm. Final. It's done. I jolted upright, gripping the blanket. I didn't recognize the place, but I recognized the feeling. A severing. Like a cord being cut. Was that my first memory? I stood and paced. If I wasn't born into that estate, if I never truly arrived there, then who brought me? And why? I dialed the county records office. When someone answered, I asked casually about my listed hospital. Ma'am, the clerk said, that facility closed in 1985. They never delivered infants. But my certificate says, it can't, she interrupted. Not legally. I thanked her and hung up. They didn't see me as real, because maybe, to them, I wasn't. That thought didn't shatter me. It anchored me. I began to gather everything, my file, my baby box, the documents Jude gave me. I needed order. I needed proof. A sudden knock at the door startled me. I wasn't expecting anyone. I walked slowly to the peephole. No one stood there. I opened it cautiously. On the floor, a small white envelope, unmarked. My fingers trembled, not with fear, but recognition of warning. Inside, a single note. Stop digging, Elora. They used her name. Her name, not mine. I locked the door behind me and double-checked every bolt, every window. The envelope still sat on my kitchen table, its message simple but weighted like a brick on my chest. Stop digging, Elora. I read it again. Not Elspeth. Elora. The name I'd never known I had. I checked my phone. No new calls, no missed ones either. But I didn't trust that silence. I paced the apartment, waiting for the creaks in the floorboards to mean something. I kept expecting someone to come through the door. I reread Jude's last text. Don't trust anyone tied to your father's estate. That included Bryn, my father, everyone. I stared at my reflection in the window. No emotion, just a woman with tired eyes and something ticking under her ribs. That ticking was resolve. I called Jude. He picked up after one ring. Elspeth, I need the full story. No more fragments, no more hints. He paused, then gave me an address. Meet me now. Bring no one. The sky opened up just as I stepped out. Rain came in sheets, wind knocking over trash bins and sending leaves in swirls. I drove through it, knuckles tight on the wheel, headlights barely piercing the downpour. Jude's office was tucked behind an aging strip mall. Nothing fancy, nothing traceable. He opened the door himself, shirt sleeves rolled up, tension all over his face. Get in. I did. He handed me a towel, then walked to a drawer and pulled out a thick envelope. I wasn't supposed to show you this, but after what you got tonight, I don't care anymore. Inside was a notarized statement, dated 15 years ago. I was working in the maternity ward that night. There was a commotion. A baby was taken off the record. I saw her face. She looked just like Elspeth Alder. I read it twice. The witness never left a name, but the description of the baby matched the old photo Jude had shown me. Jude spoke softly. She said it was covered up. The security footage wiped. The birth logs altered. And the name? Elora Jean? I asked. He nodded. We believe that was your birth name. The baby reported missing from Birch County Hospital in Vermont, 1991. I sat back. Something burned behind my eyes, but I didn't let it fall. I wasn't going to cry for a name I'd never known. Then he stood, went to his desk, and unlocked a drawer. There's more. He slid over a USB. The video from your birthday, the one broadcast on the estate's private feed. My heart stopped. You saw the edited version, he said. Everyone did. He hit play on his laptop. There I was, sitting at the table, trying to fake a smile. My father speaking about legacy, about loyalty. Then came the slap. Clear, loud, cruel. The room went dead silent in the video. Then he said it. You're not part of this line. You never were. I leaned forward, jaw clenched. And this, Jude continued, was cut out of the video they shared publicly. What about the will? I asked. That clause was edited out too. He disinherited you. Completely. And they made sure no one saw it. I sat back. I had felt humiliation that night. But this was confirmation. That wasn't just anger. It was erasure. Intentional. Calculated. Jude turned the laptop toward me. Now you have the truth. We stepped outside together. The storm had slowed, but hadn't stopped. 2 black SUVs idled near the lot. I felt it instantly. Something off. The men didn't speak, just watched. Then one walked toward us and dropped something into Jude's hand. No words, just a glance. He walked away. It was another USB. Jude plugged it into the laptop, eyebrows drawn, a short audio file, a woman's voice, mine. Please, Daddy, just give me something. I'm desperate. I need help. My mouth fell open. That's fake, I said. I've never said those words. I know, Jude replied. It's a plant, meant to ruin your credibility. I nodded. Then we hold it. When the time's right, I'll bury them with their own lie. Back at my apartment, I didn't rest. I reinforced the door, then set up my phone to record. Every room, every sound. I texted Bryn. Let's talk. Just you and me. Family stuff. She replied too quickly. Fine, but don't get emotional. That's when I knew I had her. I watched the original birthday video again, then flipped through the infant photos Jude gave me. One thing stood out, a tiny mark behind the left ear. I walked into the bathroom, pulled back my hair. It was there. Proof. I returned to my desk, compiled everything, Labeled files, time-stamped video, clipped side-by-side comparisons. Then my phone buzzed. A number with no name. I picked it up. One text. "Stop this now, or you will vanish too." I didn't panic. I didn't scream. I just stared at that screen and whispered to myself, "So now I know I'm close." My phone buzzed in the dark. I stared at it. "Stop this now, or you will vanish too." The words glowed like a threat. I sat there, silence pressing in, realizing this was no longer about proving anything to them. It was about survival. I flipped open my photo drawer. The one they told me was too worn to show. I pulled out a picture, Bryn and I on a porch swing. She was laughing. I looked hopeful. But now it felt like proof of a story I didn't belong in. The laughter seemed cruel in hindsight. Was I ever a sister or always a stranger? I texted Bryn. She agreed to meet, somewhere neutral. There are things you don't say to someone who's been told she doesn't exist. But I needed to hear her side. We met in a small cafe mid-afternoon. She looked worn out. Her coffee cup shook faintly. I laid out my cards, the altered birth certificate, Jude's documents, the restored video. I watched her face shift, fear, guilt, regret. She looked away. "I tried once," she whispered. "I overheard Dad arguing with someone. Someone said, 'You can't just keep her. She's not yours.' He replied, 'She is now. No one else wanted her.'" Her voice cracked. She said she was 10 then. She was told she couldn't speak, or she'd be sent away. We both knew what girl's home meant in contexts like hers. She confessed that she watched me grow in silence. She hated it, but she feared Dad more. Their mother pretended she never noticed. In that moment, I felt betrayal and something else, pity. She was part of the machinery that hurt me, but she was also trapped by it. Back in my apartment, I lay flat across my bed, fully clothed. Memories surfaced like ghosts, moments when I asked for photos, when I sensed silence after questions. My inner voice repeated, "I was never theirs, never theirs." It felt like a mantra I'd said too many times. I considered giving up, let them continue their lies, but then I thought of Alora Jean. She vanished so someone else could take her place. What would she have done? I climbed out of the dark, stood upright, decided I would speak, even if no one listened. I opened the keepsake box. I searched until I found the cloth bracelet, faded, frayed, with a single embroidered letter. E. My name now. The name they hid. The name that meant everything. I pressed it against my heart. It echoed louder than any video or will. My identity was not erased. I searched Vermont databases. In a local news archive, Miriam Holloway, mother of missing infant, 1991. My fingers shook. I dialed the number listed. A frail voice answered. "Hello?" I whispered. "I think I might be your daughter." Then silence. Then, crying. I drove slowly toward the Talcott Estates meeting hall, the original will and Jude's documents tucked away in my glove box. Rain threatened overhead, but I was beyond caring. I rehearsed my opening, clear, firm, no begging. When security flagged me at the gate, I stayed calm. "I have business inside," I said. They checked my name, nodded, and guided me in. The hall was grand as ever, marble floors, high ceilings, silent guests. Orson's eyebrow raised when he saw me. Bryn's lips curved in that cold smirk. I didn't give them time. I walked straight to the center. "I have something you hid, and I'm here to prove it." They tried to block me from accessing the archival video. "No one sees that," Bryn's attorney said. Orson motioned for them to stop. I cited my rights as heir, demanded transparency. Staff wheeled in the monitor. I took a shaky breath. They played the uncut version. No edits. I saw it all. The slap. The silence afterward. The claws disinheriting me. My father's cold voice. "You're not part of this line." The room gasped. Bryn's face flickered. Orson's eyes widened. I stood firm. It was their truth, finally in plain light. Then Orson rose. His voice echoed. "Yes, I knew she was not mine, but I claimed her so no one else could." He dropped the bomb. He'd seen a birth certificate labeled Elora Jean Holloway before I was adopted. Bryn gasped. The hall stilled. He argued his motive was legacy, protection. I swallowed the fire in my chest. I spoke quietly. Protection built on lies isn't protection. It's a prison. The crowd was still. The air hung heavy. Bryn's side retaliated. They projected a false audio that claimed I begged my father for money. I scanned the room. It wasn't real. I countered. I revealed metadata proving the file was forged, named the file's creator, a mid-level Talcott ally. The room murmured. Bryn moved toward me. I lifted the mic again. No more lies. The room fell silent. She snapped back, but I held the floor. I wasn't their victim anymore. Board members shifted. Some stood, then stepped back from Bryn's faction. She stormed out, slamming doors behind her. Orson remained, drained, his facade crumbling. The illusion of control slipped from him. I watched from the edge of the hall, chest tight. This was only beginning. After everyone left, I slipped into Orson's private office. The safe door was ajar. Inside lay the sealed document. Original will, Elora Jean Holloway, 1991. I traced the wax seal with shaking fingers. I lifted the cover slowly. My birthright glared back at me in cold ink. I arrived early, not because I needed more time, but because I wanted to be the one already seated when they walked in. There's a difference. That meeting room at the estate had always felt cold, no matter the season. Today, it felt colder. I had the documents tucked neatly in my bag. My voice, ready. My spine, steel. Bryn waltzed in first, smirking like she owned air. Orson trailed behind her, slow but smug. The others took their seats like kids waiting for the principal to call their name. Orson chuckled and said, "I assume we're here for another one of your emotional performances?" I leaned in, didn't blink. "If you want drama, we'll produce truth." Then I turned to the legal rep and said clearly, "Start recording." That moment, the room tensed. The game had changed. I asked for the reading of the inheritance clause, not the copy they liked to wave around, the original. They stalled. Bryn whispered to her lawyer. I didn't move. "Bring it out," I said. The lawyer, reluctantly, pulled a sealed file from a leather briefcase. The room shifted. When the clause was read, the one cutting me off completely, you could hear the gasp ripple across the table like a breeze through tall grass. My name, missing. No trust, no share, no reason. I didn't shake, but I did ask, "Is this what you're willing to defend in court?" Orson's jaw tensed. He didn't answer. His eyes scanned the room like he'd lost control of the script, because he had. Then, from the back, a voice cracked the silence. "I was there that night, in Vermont." Heads turned. An older woman stepped forward. Etta Mae Holloway. My heart dropped into my stomach. She'd lived across from the hospital where I was supposedly born. I saw a man loading a baby into a van. Late at night, I heard crying. He wasn't a nurse. He wasn't wearing a badge. She paused. That man worked for Orson Talcott. Bryn's color drained like someone pulled the plug. You could hear a pin drop. And my pulse? It steadied. We weren't speculating anymore. We were exposing. I looked around that room and thought, this is the moment liars regret. Orson barked to security. "Escort her out." I stood up. "She has the right to speak." Bryn leaned in and hissed, "Do you want to bring the whole family down?" I met her eyes. "No, just the liars." Etta continued. She described the baby's blanket, the hurried steps, the man's face. Then she said the name out loud. Elora Jean Holloway. My name. She said it like she'd carried it in her bones for decades. My throat burned, but I didn't cry. Not now. Orson leaned back, suddenly quiet. He was losing grip, and everyone could see it. Some board members stood up. "We need a break," one said. Bryn's allies began whispering, circling, but the room was no longer theirs. The air had shifted. I remained standing, still, centered, focused. I quoted Martin Luther King Jr., loudly. "Truth crushed to earth will rise again." Orson looked away, the fight in him fading. Then the lawyer walked to the front. He placed a sealed envelope on the table. "This is the original," he said. I stepped forward. My fingers unsealed it like I'd done it 100 times in my head. The page unfolded. My name. My full name. Elora Jean Holloway. Right there. Listed. Primary heir. Bryn's chair scraped loudly as she lunged, hand outstretched like she could erase it. Security stepped in. She yelled, "She's a fraud!" No one moved. I raised the will. Not like a trophy. Like truth being held to the light. Chapter 8. When Lies Fight Back. I walked back into that boardroom like I'd never left. Same walls, same faces, but something in the air had changed. They felt it too. Bryn's fake calm, Orson's shifting posture, and the way security tracked my every step like they knew I wasn't done. I had the original will in one hand. In the other, a folder that looked thin but felt heavy. I didn't need to raise my voice. I just looked at them and said, "Let's finish what you started." Bryn tilted her head, that smug smile barely hanging on. She thought this was over. Orson gave a tight nod to one of his aides, probably thinking I'd play the emotional card again. I didn't. Instead, I placed the folder flat on the table. "These," I said, "are Oklahoma State vaccination records." Blank stares all around. From 1991 to 1995, there's no record of me under Talcott, nor under any alias tied to this family. Silence. I turned a page. They were uploaded to the state system last month. Time-stamped, digitally verified. A lawyer near Orson leaned forward and whispered something. He looked down, pale. Bryn tried to laugh. "Come on, we're talking about paperwork from 30 years ago. Glitches happen." "No," I said. "Fraud happens. And I brought proof." I held up a forensic report. Simple, clear. Anyone in the room could follow it. Bryn blinked, lips parted like she wanted to argue but couldn't find her cue. Orson adjusted his cuffs, that old trick when he was stalling for control. He didn't have any left. "I wasn't vaccinated under your name," I said, voice calm. "Because I wasn't your child. You didn't even bother to cover the basics." Then I stood. "You stripped me from your will," I said. "Now I strip away your lies." I tapped my phone, sent a line of text. The big screen behind me blinked alive, showing one simple message. "This is the last check you'll ever cash in my name." Bryn shot up, shouting, "You're nothing but a bitter little—" "Enough!" Orson barked, slamming the table. "I'm not bitter," I said, turning to them. "I'm awake." They didn't know I had filed the injunctions, the media requests, the leaks to outside press, but now they did, because from the windows we all heard the unmistakable pop of camera shutters, media vans, lights, and panic. Bryn's lawyers scrambled. Orson's allies looked sick. I pointed to the sealed documents. Medical fraud. Identity suppression. You want to talk legacy? Let's talk federal prison. The tide turned fast. Board members stood. Some left. Others asked for private recess. I watched as Bryn's support cracked like a dry wall under rain. Even her closest aides pulled away from her. One murmured, "We didn't sign up for this." Orson gripped the arms of his chair like they were life rafts. He wasn't angry, he was afraid. And I'd seen that look before. Back when I was a little girl asking where my baby photos were, and he said, "Not everything needs an answer." Now it did. Bryn made a move like she wanted to spit something venomous, but I beat her to it. "You robbed a child of her truth," I said, "and then you made her thank you for it." She froze. The room shifted. No more glances of sympathy. No more cover. Just exposure. Later, in the drawing room, I sat alone with the will on my lap. For the first time, I didn't feel the need to prove anything. I didn't read it again. I didn't need to. "My name," I said softly, "is Elora Jean Holloway, and I haven't lost it." Bryn stormed past, face like stone. Orson lingered behind, but couldn't bring himself to look at me. When the doors closed, it was just me and the quiet. I expected rage. But instead, what I felt was stillness. I let it settle in my chest. Then my phone buzzed. An email from a sender I didn't recognize. Holloway Foundation. No message body, just a subject line. We are ready when you are. I tapped it open. Inside, one line. You are not alone. I read it again. And again. Then I smiled. The lake didn't speak, but its silence filled everything. I stood barefoot on the porch of a cabin I hadn't earned, not by money anyway. They said it came from a donor. No one named names, but the envelope was embossed with the Holloway Foundation seal. I didn't ask questions. I just came. Steam curled from the cup in my hand. Chamomile, plain and warm. The wood beneath my feet creaked like it had stories of its own. I could hear the water shift, a soft lapping against the rocks. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't bracing for another blow. Peace isn't loud. It doesn't knock. It just shows up once the noise gives up. Inside, I laid the original will on the table. Not like a weapon, not anymore. I wasn't rereading it to prove anything. I just wanted to see it for what it was. Paper and ink. Not destiny. Not identity. Just a record that they tried to erase me, and failed. The folder was thicker now. Legal papers, old photos, notes scribbled on yellow pads, receipts I kept for some reason. I spread them out like puzzle pieces. No more rage, no more courtroom heat, just clarity. I whispered out loud, almost without thinking. They tried to bury me with lies, but I was the root growing through stone. That's when I pulled the notebook toward me. I didn't plan to publish it, not for social media, not for interviews. I was writing for the one person who needed to remember, me, and maybe others like me. Later that evening, I drafted a proposal to the Holloway Foundation. I wanted to set up a public archive for kids lost in the cracks, for families torn by falsified names and stolen beginnings. Not revenge, just redirection. I'd been angry long enough. It was time to plant something better. There were 2 envelopes I kept in a drawer, one for Orson, one for Bryn. I never sent them, but tonight, I opened them again. To Orson, I'd written, "You feared the truth more than you loved your child. That fear cost you everything." And to Bryn, "You inherited a kingdom of ash, and in your greed, you swallowed the fire." I didn't cry when I tossed them in the fireplace. I watched the paper curl and lift in silent wisps. The heat didn't hurt. It healed. Just after dawn, my phone rang. Camille, the same journalist I once turned down. "Still want to tell your story?" she asked, gentle. "I do," I said. "But no edits, no embellishments. The truth doesn't need makeup." We agreed to start filming next month. I sat by the lake until the sun rose fully, warming the rocks under my feet. It looked like forgiveness. Not for them, no, not for them. But for me. I wasn't the daughter they raised. I wasn't the villain they painted. I am the woman who remembered. I walked down the slope to the lake's edge, picked up a stone, skipped it once, twice, then watched it sink. Walking back up, I passed the mailbox. I almost didn't check it, but something tugged. Inside was a single envelope, handwritten, no stamp, just initials, J.H. I stared at it, fingers trembling slightly. It felt like a knock from the past, or maybe a hand reaching forward. I pressed it to my chest and whispered, "This story isn't over."